Am I the a-hole for not offering to care for my unwell ex-husband? Throwaway account. I, 56F, have been married to my wife, Angela, 56F, for a year, and we are planning our first anniversary celebration with a trip overseas. I was very excited to spend this time with my wife, but unfortunately, my ex-husband Dan, 58M's recent hospitalization is putting a damper on my plans. Backstory: I met Dan in college, and we got married shortly after graduating when we found out that I was pregnant. At the time, it felt like the right thing to do, but looking back, it was a bad idea. I resented having to put my career aspirations on hold in order to be the full-time caregiver, and Dan resented having to be the main financial provider. However, this did not stop him from constantly bringing it up whenever I asked him to help with the kids or the home. He also never defended me when his mother would stop by unannounced and the household was not up to the Queen's standards. I felt exhausted and trapped, and if it were not for my kids, Junior, 34, Sarah, 32F, Michelle, 29F, and Mike, 29M, I would have left years ago. Unfortunately, Dan did not share the same values as me and blindsided me with divorce papers. It was a rough process, but after the first year following our divorce being finalized, I got my groove back. Within the next 4 years, I was able to get a nice apartment and a good career. A couple of weeks ago, Dan was rushed to the hospital. While the doctors were able to save him, his health took a turn for the worse. His wife is now essentially working to provide for their kids, while her parents watch them to save on daycare. I learned all of this through my children, as I do not care to have any direct contact with Dan. Almost every time I talk to them, they bring up how stressed and tired they are from having to look after their father. I thought I was just being a sympathetic ear, but a couple of days ago my children came together to confront me about my lack of willingness to offer assistance to their father. They told me that, as their mother, I should want to care for him to make their own lives easier. My children know that while I have a full-time job, I can make up my own hours, and they want me to go into his house at least twice a week to make sure he is clean and fed, or pay for a nurse to come do it. I refused, stating that Dan and I have been divorced for years and that their stepmother can handle that. That is when they told me that she does not care about their dad the way they do and is most likely hoping for him to pass so she can collect on his insurance policy as the legal wife. My daughter Sarah then began to cry and asked me if I cared whether or not she still had a dad. Junior and Mike thought I was being bitter. Michelle asked me to put them first and reschedule my anniversary trip with Angela. My former in-laws are also calling me to say that I need to do this and that I would be a horrible mother if I do not. Update 1. I forgot the password to this account, and my stepdaughter showed me what to do. Once I accessed it, I saw that I had received a few messages from people asking for an update, so I thought I would share one. First, a few people seem to be confused, so let me be clear: I am a woman who is married to another woman. My own parents passed away years ago, so their opinion is irrelevant. My wife and I both have children from previous relationships, but we did not meet until after our children were adults. My wife and I are the only ones who have lived together. Now onto what almost everyone else cares about the most. I went on the cruise. It was great, and my wife and I had a really great time. My children were predictably unhappy, and I am sure my temporary blocking of them did not make it better. Most of my children kept calling and telling me that I was a selfish and awful woman for choosing to go on vacation instead of being there for the family. Like many of you stated, I reminded them that their father divorced me and therefore my obligations to him ended. If it were any of them who had a medical need, I would cancel without question, but I would not do so for their father. I thought I could leave it at that, but they kept calling and texting for the first 3 days of the trip, which is when I decided to block them. Unfortunately, my ex's health took a turn for the worse, and he had to go back to the hospital. His lack of proper care triggered an investigation. I did not know any of this until I unblocked my kids the day I got back, and some of them blamed me. I have come to the conclusion that they are all just angry at the situation and that I am a convenient villain. I have accepted this because I understand the fear and anger of facing the idea of losing a parent you love. I hope that one day we can all sit down with a family therapist and mediate the situation. This situation did start to trigger my past tendencies of sacrificing my own happiness and well-being for my children, but my wife, therapist, and even a small piece of my inner self had to remind me that my children are adults and that my ex is not my responsibility. I tried to reach out, and so far most of my children are not talking to me and have made it very clear that I will not be able to see my grandchildren as a punishment. It is sad, and I am still wrestling with guilt and doubt, but my wife and stepchildren are being very supportive. My other family members are mixed, and most of my friends are neutral. Update 2, small update. I hope everyone reading this had a wonderful holiday and will have a great new year. For anyone who has been following my drama-filled and emotionally taxing life, I have another update for anyone who cares. Update 3. This year, it was my wife's and my turn to host. Since this past November was rough for us and her side of the family, we decided to go all out with a bigger tree, decorations, planned activities, and meals. As the adults, we decided to do a secret gift exchange where we pulled names out of a hat. This year, I got my stepdaughter Megan, 24F. I made her a sweater by hand, but it was terrible, so I decided to make it a gag gift with a gift card to something she actually liked. On the actual day, my wife and I woke up, had breakfast, exchanged our spouse gifts, and then got ready for everyone else. Attending were Megan, Miranda, 34F, Miranda's husband, Jack, 34M, the grandkids, 8F and 5F, and a couple of others. None of the guests were my children with their families. It was sad but not unexpected, and I think people could sense that because the kids were extra affectionate with me. We played board games, ate, did crafts, talked, watched movies, and opened gifts. It was nice. At one point, Miranda pulled me aside and asked me to adopt her. I do not want to go into details, but Miranda's father was never active in her life, and she has not spoken to him in about 3 years. She said that with the coming year, if something were to happen, she would not want a man she barely knows to have the power to make medical decisions for her if Jack or my wife were unable to. She and Jack also know that if anything were to happen, I would not let my wife raise the grandkids alone. This completely took me by surprise, and I cried while graciously accepting. We made the announcement, and we are going to start the legal process in a week. The kids have already started calling me a grandma-type name. We took and posted pictures. Since I knew I was blocked, I did not expect my children to see them, but apparently they did. They were upset and unblocked me just to tell me. My children feel that adult adoption is weird, that it was disrespectful to announce it on social media, and how hurtful it was that I made Megan a sweater but never made it anything for them. I stopped crocheting when my grandmother, the one who taught me, passed away when I was a teenager, and I never had the spare time when my children were kids. I tried to call to explain, but I was blocked again. However, my daughter-in-law, Junior's wife, sent me a message with some information. My children are mad that I got Miranda's kids presents but not my real grandkids. They think I am replacing them with my wife's family, that I am selfish, and that they cannot believe I never once tried to reach out to see the grandkids. I wanted to reach out, but I thought it would be less harmful for both them and me if I did not force contact. Mini update in comments: yes, the adoption was finalized. Since Miranda is over 18, the adoption went much quicker than it would have if she were a minor, despite her father's ironic objections. Update 4. I, 56F, have come across a new problem in my life, and my wife, 56F, thinks coming here will either help me get another perspective or give me validation. I have 4 children that I birthed and raised, 35M, 32F, 29M, and 29F, with my ex-husband. They all recently decided to cut me out of their lives because I refused to care for their father. I refused on the basis that we divorced over 10 years ago, and they feel I should help take care of him as a favor to them. I have stuck by my decision and chose to go on a cruise with my wife instead of caring for their dad. They have not spoken to me directly since. Right now, the only way I would be able to see my children or grandchildren would be if I physically went to their house and forced my way in, but I do not want to be that person. I admit it has not been easy, and I miss them, but my wife, therapist, and I all agree that if I give in, I am just showing that I will cave to their demands every time. They have made it very clear that it is either I care for their father nearly every day or nothing, and I do not want to do that, especially since my ex-husband and I did not divorce on good terms. Recently, my eldest son's wife, Kate, 34F, reached out to me and said she had an emergency and asked if I wanted to see my grandchildren Emma, 9F, and Kyle, 6M. I obviously agreed. At the time, I was under the impression that my son was aware, and since I was still blocked, I did not think to check. Kate dropped the kids off, and I had a nice time with them. She came back a few hours later and asked if I could watch them again. When I asked how my son felt, she told me that while he was still angry, he was fine with it and to contact her if there were any problems. Unfortunately, Kate was lying, and I found out when my son came to my house furious. Apparently, Kate and my son have been having problems since November. She started looking for lawyers after my son told her to quit her part-time job, stop going to school online, and become a stay-at-home mother while also planning baby number 3. Kate stated that my son has been doing things to sabotage her, and sadly, some of what she said tracks with both my son and his father. My son stopped payment for daycare. Kate's nearest relative lives about an hour away, and any friends she trusts are also friends with my son and refuse to get involved. I was not happy about being lied to, but I cannot bring myself to be too angry because I got to see 2 of my grandkids. I admit it is selfish, but I agreed to keep helping Kate in exchange for honesty and the understanding that if my son came for the kids, I would not keep them from him. I also agreed to pay for summer daycare so the kids would have something fun to do. My son was predictably unhappy. My children unblocked me only to say I am a traitor and a terrible person. It hurts, but my wife believes that providing a safe and fun place for the grandkids comes first. So I have to ask, am I the a-hole? Added for clarity, when I found out Kate was initially lying, I did not take her word alone. I asked my son directly, and he either admitted to or did not deny the accusations. Kate also showed me text messages and allowed me to look through her phone. My son is displaying many of the same behaviors as my ex-husband. My ex does have a wife. From what my children have said, she was not doing a good job caring for him, although I have not spoken to her directly. Final update: over the summer, I paid for my son's children to attend summer camp during the day so Kate could get her affairs in order. My son went to the camp and told them he did not consent, so the kids lost their spots. My grandchildren were devastated. His goal was to use them to force Kate to stay home. He threatened to call the police if they ever came to my house. Kate eventually left the kids with him and made sure they understood that their father was the reason they could not attend camp. During legal proceedings, my son attempted to claim abandonment, but Kate showed proof that he interfered with childcare while offering no alternatives. Using my wife's connections, the children were able to attend another summer program for the last month, and they enjoyed it. Kate now has her own place and a better paying job and allows me to FaceTime with the kids. My children later resumed contact only to harass me and interfere with my wife's work, which resulted in us sending a formal legal notice. I am exhausted, but I am happier now than I ever was married to my ex-husband. I later learned through Kate that my ex's condition stabilized, though he is permanently impaired. It was also discovered that he had secretly spent thousands on OnlyFans accounts, which contributed to his wife's anger. One of my daughters contacted adult social services, but the investigation found no fault with his wife, only that my ex refused to participate in his recovery.